Start now.
Good evening and welcome to this live event for Year 8 and Year 9 parents. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Jim Coop. I'm the principal here at the school. I think probably most of you, if not all of you, do know me. Now then, if your child is not with you right now, I'm guessing they're going to be at home because of the circumstances that we're now in. Go and get them. The reason why I say this is that we work together, and this will be time well spent in making sure that we're all on the same page, because there's lots of information that we're going to be going through over the next few minutes. The purpose of this evening is to bring you up to speed on all that's happening in school, particularly in the classroom, but also beyond. Your children have settled back into their learning at school brilliantly. They really have. Children are so resilient and adaptable, and they worked really well during lockdown as well, which means that they don't have huge gaps, but we are totally committed to closing out any gaps that they do have in their learning. And that's the way we want to be. We want them to get ahead. We want them to stay ahead. And as is our tradition here at the Academy, we want them to achieve outstanding progress and really perform as well as they possibly can do. Besides our presentations, there's also going to be an opportunity for you to ask questions. Now, to do this, if you're unfamiliar with the Teams approach, we've done lots of these events for different year groups in different settings and so on. But if this is your first time, there's a Q&A box on the side, and we encourage you to ask those questions. Basically, they come to us privately, and if it's a specific question for your situation, we will respond to it typed in. We'll publish some questions with responses, ones that is useful for ones which is useful for you guys to be able to actually see collectively. And then what we'll also do once we've done our presentations is also to do a live Q&A. So please use those questions, and remember that there is no question. This is not just about the learning. It could be about how we're approaching our health and safety here at the school. There's no question that's off limits. Now, in terms of the people who are with me this evening, there's plenty of people here. I've got Martin Sacri, who is the Raising Standards leader, so he's got a great level of responsibility for Year 8. I've got Claire Joyce, who's with me, who's got the equivalent role and responsibility in Year 9, and they spend plenty of time setting tone, doing assemblies and working with your children in their respective year groups. I've also got Hayley Hill, that many of you will know as your parent representative, vice principal, and she's also going to be handling the questions. So she's whilst the presentations are happening, she's going to be thinking lots about the questions. And finally, last but not least, Tim Harkins, who is our producer for this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Martin, who's going to get things started by reminding you of our core values. Martin.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Mr. Coop. That's excellent. Yes. Tim, if you could go to the next slide, please, that would be really good. Thank you. So Year 8 and 9 parents, it's really nice that you're all here. We had the parents information evenings last year in person. I'd very much like to be seeing you in person. I do like to look into people's eyes, but it's nice that we can actually do this in this whole event in these current circumstances like this. Some of the slides, the ones that I'm going to be going through to start off with, you might be familiar with, because last year when we did these evenings, we used a few of these slides. The fact that we're using them again is not an accident, or that we just can't think about new slides to give you. It's really about the fact that these are slides that form our core way of working. And if you look there at our shared values, you can see those there. They really do run through what we do like a stick of rock. You should be able to ask any members of staff and any students what our core values are, and they should be able to tell you. And there they are for you on that slide. So what we have obviously is hard work. That's what we do. and obviously our students, both year 8s and year 9s, all demonstrate that on a daily basis. The next one is integrity. We do something because it's the right thing to do. So when we see the students around and about the school, we get a real sense that our student body has got plenty of integrity. And then the third value is about excellence. The idea that if we work hard, if we show integrity, then we will achieve and make sure we reach our full potential. So those are our shared values. Thank you, Tim. The next slide, please. So, yeah, what we're going to do now is go on to how we actually make sure that students are making progress and that they are achieving. The phrase KPI, what that means is key performance indicators, and it is the situation that we have what's called a knowledge-based curriculum, and students should be clear on what they are learning, and the skills that they need to be able to learn are there. So that's why across all subjects they have these KPIs so that students know exactly what they're achieving and what they should learn every day, then every week, and then indeed every term and every single year. We need clarity around that. Thank you, Tim. The next slide, please. So you'll see there the power of yet, and it's very important that we use the correct language. What we don't do with students here at Shoreham Academy is we don't set boundaries. It's about where they can actually get to. There's not a ceiling that they cannot reach above, and what we really encourage them to do is to smash through the ceiling so that they can get better every single day. So what we do is we say, with regards to those KPIs in all your subjects, year 8 and 9, are you exceeding them? That's fantastic. If you're meeting them, you know what? That's good. But we'll always say to them, well, why shouldn't you be able to exceed if you're meeting them? And then you'll see there that we don't have not met, because that suggests that that's it. It might never happen. What we say is we use the power of yet, which is not yet meeting that KPI, to say that, how can we help and support you to make sure that you do actually meet that KPI. So with regards to KPIs, then what we need to be able to let you know is how students are doing, and we have a reporting system here. Being as I'm speaking with year 8 and 9 parents, I know that you've most likely seen the reports before, but I think it's very important that we just go through how they actually look. Perhaps the best way to find out if students are actually meeting the KPIs is when we get the opportunity to actually give them an assessment, and we call them cycle tests. They have 3 of these: cycle 1 in term 1, cycle 2 in term 2, and then cycle 3 at the end of the summer term. And we hope that the way that this is laid out is going to be really helpful for you. Attitude in that first column there after the subject, you see, is really important. You need to know how your sons and daughters are actually doing. So obviously, if they're getting sapphires and greens, that's what we want them to be able to achieve. You'd also want to know what the result that they are managing to achieve in the test. So that next column is the cycle test column. The example you have there is the one from cycle 3. And this is from parent feedback. I mean, we really listen to parents in terms of clarity and how we feed things back. The school average column, you know what, we didn't have that there. When we first did these reports, the school average column was not there. And you actually fed back to us and said what would be really helpful is just to give us an idea about how my son and daughter is doing in comparison to other students. So that's why we find that column is really helpful for us, and of course, very importantly for you. And then it's always good to see in terms of our high achievers, and my goodness, we have lots of those at Shoreham Academy, looking at how well students are doing, what's the highest score that's been achieved in that course, so that a comparison can be made. So you'll be asking yourself, okay, Mr. Sack, you're giving us all this information. When are things actually going to be happening? So Tim, if we go to the next slide, thank you, Mr. Harkins. You can see there that for years 8 and 9, this is going to be a very important week for students from Monday the 7th to Friday the 11th of December. We're going to be having the assessments. Year 8 and 9 parents, you can imagine the sort of planning that's going on at the moment with how we can actually make sure that these assessments happen in the best possible way. But if you think about COVID at the moment and how we're organising rooms and hall spaces and that sort of thing, my goodness, things are changing every single day, aren't they, as well, with what expectations are. But what you've got in front of you is what we think it's going to look like at the moment. But as you know, with these things, with COVID, things might change. So it is the case that we think the assessments are going to be happening in classrooms. Obviously, a timetable will be released so that students know when the exams, the tests are going to be, and a revision schedule, which we're going to talk about a bit later, will be in place. And, you know, students will be focusing on those KPIs that haven't been met yet through teachers' assessments so far. So that gives us a real focus for that. So why this emphasis on testing? What we need to be able to do is make sure that your sons and your daughters achieve the best possible results when it comes to the end of key stage 4. So when they do their GCSE exams at the end of year 11, if you look at how it used to be, the assessment structure that's been put in place by the government and the Department for Education, you can see that it used to be that there was coursework, wasn't there? We can all remember the days of coursework, can't we? But that's now largely gone. And whereas before it would be that students at the end of year 11 would have an average of, say, 13 exams across all of their subjects, 19 hours of work that would be. If we look at what it's been like since 2018, you can see there that now they're most likely going to get 22 exams, which is 33 hours worth of exams. So you can see why this emphasis on giving them, making sure they get the chance to rehearse, to learn what it's like to sit an exam is going to be the key thing. So you can see there, perhaps that actually explains it better than I have done so far, the forgetting curve. So frequent low stakes testing. Low stakes, we really don't want students to be panicking about these cycling tests. Of course, they they need to worry about them to the extent that they're actually going to do some work, of course, but we don't want them to absolutely worry about them so much that they're not going to be able to achieve their best. So by having these low stakes tests, it just helps to embed that knowledge. So if you look at the first curve there, you can see, and we know what that's like in terms of how much we forget over 3 days. We learn something, then what happens after 3 days? How much of that can we remember? If we keep repeating and reviewing, you can see as the curve moves to the right, that helps us to actually embed that knowledge so that we can be successful in those exams. We're now going to turn attention to the core subjects of maths and English, and I've got Miss Joyce, who's now going to step in and give us some information about year 8 and 9 maths.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're well. I am very much like Martin, where I'd much rather see you, but we are in this situation. So year 8 and 9 maths. Miss Kerr wanted to make sure that we were able to give you the information of what the topics that the students are learning, as well as a few things about presentation and Hegarty. So if we just, the topics there, this will all be on Firefly for everybody to access, but the autumn term, the spring term and the summer term are there for you to take a look at in your own time. Next slide, please, Mr. Harkins. Awesome. So although this is small, I will try and blow this up for the one that we put onto Firefly. But this is basically how we present in books. So we expect the maths department, expect the title and date underlined, the margin ruled in pencil with the appropriate diagrams and whatnot. And now that is how you should see the maths books being presented. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. OK, so on to Hegarty. The maths department have the 80% rule, and that is basically that students can look at those 4 areas highlighted. There's things like details of time spent, questions answered, the search for the topics at the top is quite simply put in. I go through that with the students quite often. Tasks set by the teacher, so that's where you can then go back, and I'm sure you've seen many computers with Hegarty on, but also looking at the previous slides. But Ms. Kerr wanted to make sure that you were aware of in that bottom right hand slide there regarding the 80%. There are also instructional videos with examples. Students are expected to take those notes, and again they are in those books. And then the quiz is taken at the end in order to get that percentage. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. OK, so we're now moving on to year 8 and 9, settling in evening English, and I believe I'm turning back to the lovely Mr. Sackery.
Thank you very much, Ms. Joyce. What I'd like to emphasise at this point is that Ms. Joyce and myself, we're presenting for maths and English here, and what all we can do is give this broad overview. We hope that it's going to be really helpful for you. You'll have seen that for the first slide in maths, that Ms. Kerr is actually the Key Stage 3 coordinator for maths, and you can see there on this slide that for English it's Ms. Albury. So we can give you this overview. Genuinely, year 8 and 9 parents, if you've got more questions and you want information in more depth, then I know that Miss Kerr and Miss Albury, they've said that they'd be very happy to hear from you, so you can send them a message or get in touch with them. So looking at English, there's just a very brief overall summary there about what is covered in years 8 and 9, and you can see there's a lot about skills. You would have seen some acronyms there, and you might have been wondering what they stood for. Well, there we are on this slide here. It's absolutely clear for you because it's the names indeed of the books that are covered, and you can see there for year 8 what the texts are for the autumn term and what they'll be covering in the spring term and the summer term. And I'm sure you'll be able to read through those in your own time. And that is the same with the year 9. You can see there the sort of literature that is being covered in year 9 for the autumn term and the spring term and the summer term as well. It's always good. You'll see that for both curriculums there's a bit of Shakespeare there. What the English department does here, it's magnificent, the way they actually bring Shakespeare to life. I know that sometimes students think, oh, it's Shakespeare, but what we do is, and we really appreciate your support in this as well, mums and dads and carers, is to make sure we really talk about what we cover in terms of literature in very positive terms, and I'm sure you'll have ways as well that you can actually bring Shakespeare to life as well. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. And then, very importantly, I think it's really important, year 8 and 9 parents, that you have a good picture of how students are assessed. And if you ever see written work at home. This is the sort of thing that, you know, your knowledge of this will help you to support your sons and daughters at home. So students have 2 exercise books in year 8 and 9. For English, they have one where they take notes, and there's one where they actually do their written work, which is marked. And it's very important that they have, well, what it's called dirt time, which is dedicated improvement and reflection time. So if students are, which they all will do, as we all do, we make mistakes, and learning is about being able to have that time to reflect on how we actually move forward. And on that slide there, you can see the mechanisms by which that actually happens. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. And then this is a new thing. So vocab is important. The more that we can help students to broaden their speech, the vocabulary that they have, the better. So you should be able to speak with your sons and daughters and ask them about the sorts of words, the new words that they are learning. And you can see there that the way that the English department do this is to put those words, the example there is injustice, to put it into different contexts. So when you get to know what those words are, then perhaps at home you can be dropping those into conversations and make sure that your sons and daughters are absolutely clear about what those words mean. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. And then Ms. Joyce talked about Hegarty, which is the online piece of software that we use for maths. For English, it's Common Lit, and that is very often used to help them with their reading homework. So you should be able to, in the same way that you recognise the way that Hegarty works, that you should be able to know how the Common Lit weekly reading homework works as well. And we encourage you to engage with that as much as possible so that you understand it, and so that you can then help and support your sons and daughters. Thank you very much, Mr. Harkins. Yeah, and very helpfully, I've just seen there, sorry to, yes, go back, the steps that when you are on the website there, the steps that you can take to understand how Common Lit works is very clearly given to you there when you log in to the online Common Lit website. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. Okay, so well, we know, don't we, because we've told you this already, that the Cycle 1 exams are going to take place between the 7th and the 11th of December. So English, your sons and daughters should be thinking about Lord of the Flies. It's been around for a long time. It's a magnificent text. I can certainly remember, even way back then, doing that as a text. So it's one that we, you know, as parents, we know, so we can help and support our sons and daughters with that. And for year 9, and the text is a view from the bridge. Once again, you know what the text is, so if you can engage with it, then you're going to be helping your sons and daughters with that. And the assessment is based on, as it says there, an extract based question, which is worth 18 marks, and it will focus on personal response to text and analysis of language. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. So this is what we can do. This is obviously something that we do in school, but at home, when you're supporting your sons and daughters with their homework, as it says there, read to them. It's an interesting thing, this, isn't it? We tend to associate reading out loud to students more with primary school, don't we? Primary school teachers stand up all the time. It's great. Storytelling, it's fantastic. But, you know, there's been research, lots of research recently says that never ends. And actually, even as adults, to be read to, listening to the radio, for example, where you get books read on the radio and that, and audio books, there's something about it, isn't there, which really helps us to understand. So if you can read to your sons and daughters regularly, that will help, and get them in turn to read back to you. And then challenge them. You know, you can tell when they're finding something straightforward. Move on to a text that is more challenging for them. Ask them about what they're learning both at school and what they're learning at home as well. Make sure now you know what Common Lit is, that you can help them with that, and encourage any form of writing. And it needn't be associated directly with what's happening in school. As it says there, it could be a personal diary, writing stories and that sort of thing. Shopping lists, I like that idea. Anything is what is said there. Thank you to the English department for giving us that help and support. Revision and homework, we go over and back to Miss Joyce.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sackery. So, Mr. Harkins, if you may go to the next slide for me, as I settle down somewhat now. Okay, so in terms of Year 8 and 9 homework, it's about developing regular homework habits. It's about getting the students ready for their independent study, certainly for the Year 9s going into Year 10 for next year. Parents can access the Firefly. If there are issues with Firefly, then please let us know. And then around 4 weeks prior to the Key Stage 3 exams, we stop setting homework and start revision tasks. Now, I have a lot of students that come up to me and say, well, we're not supposed to be set any homework. Well, conveniently, the homework actually becomes revision tasks and they are supposed to be completed. So therefore, revision tasks will be completed, ready for Cycle 1 tests. In terms of the English, you have 45 minutes. So this is now Year 8s and 9s. Last year used to be slightly different, but this is the same now. So English is 45 minutes, maths is 60 minutes, science is 45 minutes, and language is 30 minutes. And Martin's just mentioned about the personal reading. Now we expect at least 2.5 hours a week. And Tim, if I may ask you to go to the next slide for me. Martin somewhat hijacked that bit for me in terms of the importance. It is a large part of your child's weekly homework is the reading for the 2.5 hours a week. And we can support this, as Martin said, you know, in terms of asking the questions, encouraging, and then discussing what it is that your student is reading or has read about that day. Not necessarily that English text, but perhaps something else that they are taking their time to get through. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. Okay, in terms of revision strategies, there's loads of information on Firefly about revision strategies. All students are supported on this. Now, in terms of, we're fortunate enough, as Martin said sort of previously, we're fortunate enough to be able to have an assembly. The RSLs, the Raising Standards Leader, have assembly every 3 weeks. And this is one of the key assemblies that we run, that we also put onto the Firefly, as I said, because it's so vitally important that the students are revising the correct KPIs, for example, that are going to be tested within Cycle 1. So we do go through that in assemblies. We also have our lovely mentors that go through usually sort of 1 to 3 if people are, you know, if students are struggling with how to revise. I think that's more to the point of what we go through in our assemblies, is how and what fits for your child. We also have our heads of school to also advise. Many of them, in fact, all 3 of them are teachers, and therefore they know what the KPIs and the breakdowns are for the subjects, for the assessments. And I would mention here that in terms of if students are needing that extra time, then the Raising Standards Leader, myself and Martin, our doors are always open and there's always a way to be able to help support students. We just need to know if your child's struggling with that revision. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. In terms of pastoral support, hand on heart, I used to be a head of school and I really value these guys. So the Doyle team consists of Dr. Merchant as head of school, Kipling, Mrs. Eaton, and Wells, Miss Ballinger. And wow, these guys really help support. And obviously the pastoral managers are around for what I would call anything non-academic, if there's any social issues. Those mentors aren't all of your mentors currently, so please ignore those, but when this gets updated, I will make sure that those mentors are correct for 8 and 9. In terms of attendance, so it's not something that you know, I lead on attendance, and it's not, you know, during these current times, it's a, you know, it's difficult to say, well, this is this and this is this in terms of the impact on GCSE results. But we do know, however, that if your student is in, and I always talk about bums on seats, if your student is in, then it is very likely that the grades that they get. Now, I completely understand the importance of what we're going through now, and we have our teachers that are set up for the live lessons so that students aren't missing any learning. And I think that's key here, is that if it's live lessons, or because of perhaps self-isolating, or if it's the fact that you've had some illness days, there's always people to talk to in terms of what's being missed, and making sure that we can move forward as a team to ensure that we have that learning in place. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. In terms of, I mentioned the mentors a moment ago, in terms of the mentor programme, so year 8 and 9, they get one careers or PSHE session, they get one reading session, and there I'm not going to go through the books, but the books for year 8 are the first bullet points there, and then the books for year 9 are the ones that they go through during that reading session in mentor time. There's a class debate session, there's a whole school assembly, which is led by the senior team, and then there's one mentor messages session that that is key notices for students to be aware of for that either coming week or you know, in terms of the days due. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. So, as Mr. Sackrey mentioned, the Cycle 1 exams in December, we will be ready for them, and we'll make sure that your child is being supported for them. In terms of parents' evening, now we can't actually put a date on this, and I know that people are keen to have a date, but due to our current situation, it's likely to use platforms that allow us to complete this virtually. We are working with United Learning to investigate which model is the most efficient, and I know that Mr. Harkins and Mr. Felton are working through some bits and pieces for sixth form at the moment, so we want to make sure that we get that right before we put out any dates. In terms of the community Christmas hampers, supporting the elderly and vulnerable members, now this has been huge in previous years, and it's basically me to put out a plea for, as it says on there, tinned foods, teas, coffees, biscuits, jam, toiletries, warm winter accessories. Any donation, genuinely, however small, will be greatly appreciated for the hampers this year. We know it's hard times for many, and we'd like to support as many within our community as we possibly can. Thank you, Mr. Harkins. Okay, I believe Miss Hill is here to mention about Friends of Shoreham Academy, our foster group.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Fabulous. Yeah, I'm sort of the.
Switch your speaker on.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I'll put that. Yeah, that's fine. Hello there. Yes, me again. We just had to remove the echo that was in the room, so that was fine. Just to let you know that I'm the sort of representative, the staff representative for Friends of Shoreham Academy. They are the equivalent of the PTA. We have done so much, and I'm so grateful for all those parents who've been involved over the last few years. And normally at this time of year, we would have had a Year 7 disco, a Travelling Trends, we'd be moving into the Christmas craft fair and all sorts of things. So they have done so much over the last few years to raise money for the school, and that money goes into enrichment activities. And I think the PTA, the foster who I've been meeting recently, have been trying to get extremely creative in how to continue to raise that money in the same way. So I just want you to look out really for some of the things that are happening. Our virtual Christmas raffle, please look out for that. as you can see on the screen, why do we have FOSSA? Why do we have our PTA? Well, we want to promote Shoreham Academy across the local community, and the hampers is one of those ways that we do that. And it's so important to raise that understanding in our students that whilst we here at Shoreham Academy, we can support a lot of people in the community, and the hampers is one way of doing that. You know, we do raise a lot of money, and a lot of that money goes back into the school. Many things that I'm really proud of. One of those things is the sensory garden that's within the school grounds, and that supports students, it supports staff that perhaps have suffered bereavement or suffering with stress or difficulties with well-being, and things like that make such a difference to the environment that we can create in school. The parents also act as a liaison, so I will ask their opinion on, you know, what do you think of this policy? What do you think we can do in this way? And so the feedback from our PTA and our parent forum is so invaluable in actually helping us shape strategy and policy. So I'm really being revealed on camera now because I want to say, if you would like to join our FOSSA, then there is the email, and I'd really love it if you could participate, because we are trying to explore as many creative ways as possible to reach out to our community, to support our community, and in addition to raise money to support enrichment activities within the school. So thank you very much. Thank you, Miss Joyce and Mr. Sacri.
Okay, so that's been a sharp 30 minutes of talk, and just sort of bringing things back together now. And whilst the presenters, and thank you very much, Hayley and Martin and Claire for doing so, have been presenting. Hayley and I have also been busy responding to some of the questions that have been being raised. What we want to try and do is pick up some of the key themes. And please keep those questions coming, and we'll keep scanning them over the next sort of 10-15 minutes. But we want to sort of respond to some of those questions, because we're conscious that some people in the audience may not have the ability to be able to see the Q&A which is coming through. I should also mention that this event is being recorded. Tim, it is being recorded, isn't it? Are you going to nod?
Yeah, that's correct. It's been recorded.
Brilliant.
It'll be on the website tomorrow.
So it provides an opportunity for, so if there are any parents that you know who didn't manage to get to the event because they had other commitments, or you want to watch it again, who knows, you might be you know, so keen to go through this information. It's there and available for you for the future. It'll be put up on the school website, as Tim said, tomorrow. So Hayley, what are the key themes coming through here? What are some of the questions that we've got?
Yeah, we've got
emerging?
quite a few questions actually that we wanted to sort of share across everybody, and I want to start by perhaps going to Mr. Sacri, if that is okay, and a number of questions that have come through about supporting well-being. And, you know, parents and carers have been told that you can't just go straight to your school pastoral office anymore because of, you know, of the bubbles and the movement across the school. And I know that they've been asked to email pastoral managers if they wish to see them or speak to them. My question from my child is about how quick is this response? You know, how quickly will the pastoral managers pick this up and come and find their child?
Hello there, it's Martin here, Martin Sacri. Yeah, I mean, well-being and supporting well-being. First of all, if I take the general picture with that, we're, you know, we are very much into what called the 5 ways to well-being, and we're looking at students, making sure that they look at those and think about on a daily basis how they're going to, for example, examples of the 5 ways to well-being, and I bet your sons and daughters will be able to tell you about them as well. How well do we connect with people? How well do we work in teams? How much are we learning? How much are we keeping active? How much are we giving? All of those things help well-being. So those are part of the daily way that we work, both in mentor time with PSHCE as well, and teachers are encouraged to support that. it's in terms of emails and response. If you send in, there's a 24-hour turnaround we expect. So if you have a real concern about your son or daughter and you want to email that through to one of the pastoral managers, or you email it through to one of the heads of school, I mean, obviously we will look at that, and if it's got a red flag, then it will be dealt with immediately. Absolutely. But for your sort of run-of-the-mill general well-being questions, we expect a 24-hour turnaround, because you're right, it's not as easy for students to get to the inclusion room. It's not as easy for them to get to pastoral offices. What we're finding is that teachers are just very, very quickly picking up on things now. And they'll report on to key members of staff, whether it be the safeguarding team, whether it be the pastoral teams. They'll be able to spot things and pick things up from there. And I think the message, I'm hoping that there are lots of students listening to this as well. You know, any adult in the school really is trained with what to do with sensitive pieces of information, and your sons and daughters should be confident to be able to report something on if they're feeling worried about something, anxious, to tell an adult, and that honestly that will get through to the right people who will be able to support your son and daughter in those situations. It's having that confidence to report on and to let someone know that there's a problem.
Thank you, Martin. That's really helpful. I've got a couple of questions about KPIs, if that's okay. Yeah. So in terms of KPIs, how do I know if my child is performing as expected, not just against the 3 levels, but taking into account previous attainment? And the sort of B part of this is, will there be a list of KPI and topics by subjects on Firefly to help revision? Okay, so the first thing is that what the slides that we've just shown you, there was one that had the reports, and actually it just had the sort of key section of the report that deals with the cycle tests. But there's another section on the report that actually deals with the KPIs across all of the subjects, so that students know what if they're managing to meet or exceed, etc. But because it's reported, it goes out, you'll get that as well. Now that's as when I think about it as well, it's quite a broad brush. It's really helpful and it will support you. But I think the individual teachers are the key people here, and you must know that at any time you can email individual teachers if you want a more detailed breakdown about how your son and daughter is doing against any of the KPIs, whether it be maths or English or science or whatever. Please, you can be in touch with that teacher, because they will be able to help you with how you can help your son and daughter with regards to KPIs. I know that as well. We're thinking about what the parents' evening are going to look like this year, and I think that it's going to be, I think I'm right in saying, Mr. Coop, you'll be saying something about how we're working towards parents' evenings and how that's going. Yeah,
we're gonna talk about that in a minute. That is a question which has been raised, and I thought I'd go into a little more detail in a few moments' time. Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, you're off mute, Hayley. Sorry.
I'm off mute. I'm allowed to speak. Hooray! Just a lovely message come in. It says, thank you for keeping communications going and also keeping our children supported and engaged during this challenging time. So, thank you very much for that really positive comment. We're working hard to achieve all of these things. So thank you for that.
It's very kind, and I have to say that we get lots of messages through, and it's really appreciated, and we do try and direct them through to the specific people when, you know, even if that message is coming through on the information line, it helps to keep us going, because it's hard work and we need to keep one another's spirits up, don't we? And in return, I'll say thank you to everything that you're doing to get your kids into school and put them in such a positive frame of mind, because they really are a credit to all of you.
Thank you. I think this might go to Tim, but Jim, feel free to drop in as well. The question is about the extracurricular activities, and we know that Shoreham is, you know, prides itself being able to offer a real enrichment package, doesn't it, for all of our students? And the question says, will you be looking at reviewing the amount of after-school activities that children can attend, and, you know, increasing it from 1 day a week? So that is something that a number of parents have asked. Yeah,
so Tim can go through the technical aspects relating to the risk assessment in just a moment, but what I'm really determined to do is to try and push the activities and the things that we can do as far as we can do within the restrictions which exist. I know how frustrated I am as a parent. I know how frustrated parents are at the lack of grassroots provision over the next 4 weeks, and we understand that it's necessary, and there are some really logical reasons why. So what we're wanting to do is to ensure that those things happen within our year group bubbles. And as you know, we set up those clubs and activities for all of the different year groups as soon as we could. In fact, we came under some pressure a couple of weeks ago because initially the guidance from the Department of Education was that they couldn't continue, and we argued, and actually, to be fair, so too did United Learning at the highest sort of level. And actually the Department of Education, not just because of us or United Learning, but they steered back on the initial guidance, and I'm really pleased that they did. I guess that what I'm trying to say is that we really want more things to happen as soon as we're able for them to happen. Tim, do you want to say a few words about the risk assessment and the ongoing process around risk assessment so that parents are fully in the loop?
Yeah, so the risk assessment's updated probably every week or so. So there was another major update following the sort of lockdown information, and that was one of the areas where we did have to sort of tweak and change, was around the extracurricular activities, because it did look at one point that they might all have to stop for a while, but fortunately that has changed, and because schools have put things safely in place in terms of running things in terms of year group bubbles, and we're recording things, and if we do have to deal with an incident in terms of our test and trace procedures, we know who's been changing next to who, and all of these kind of things that we have to do, knowing where every student is pretty much at all points of the day. So currently that's how we've got set up for extracurricular activities. What tends to happen is that subject leaders or the PE team will come to myself and to the leadership team and say, look, I'd like to do this. We want to try and push the boundaries and get more activities running. There are limitations in terms of what we can do safely, but as soon as we're able to find ways of increasing that level of extracurricular activities that corresponds and complies with the guidance that we have to work to for sort of safety under the sort of pandemic restrictions, then we'll move things along. If ever you need to look at where we are in terms of that risk assessment, I think we're on version 17 at the moment. You'll find it on the school website under the policy section, and it's tweaked as we try and move things forward while keeping them safe all the time. It's an ongoing process, and we'll involve staff, students, and parents where we need to.
Yes, you're on.
Thank you. Me again. This is to Martin or to Claire. It's to do with, you showed a timetable about homework, and it says, as it's less than 4 weeks before the Key Stage 3 assessments, are they already revising? Should they be doing this already?
Over to you, Miss Joyce. You've stepped into the sat in the hot seat.
Keeping my steps up. Yes, so teachers should be setting those revision tasks. I will send an email out tomorrow, though, just to make sure that the tasks are appropriate on Firefly. In actual fact, I'll do it this evening, just to make sure tasks are set as appropriate, because as you say, Miss Hill, is that we have 3 weeks, I believe it is, till the cycle test. So yeah, I'll put an email out tomorrow just to make sure that they are revision tasks ready for those cycle tests. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. Just a question to Mr. Coop. What's happening to Christmas? Is it cancelled, or is there scope for there to be some kind of Christmas celebration within the school?
Yeah, funnily enough, we were only talking about this at the so prior to this live event, we've had a senior leadership team meeting, and we were talking about the plans that we had in order to bring some well-needed cheer into our lives, especially at times when things are quite limited. Obviously, you know, we can't have a carol service like we ordinarily would do. We can't have our Christmas concert as we ordinarily would do. So we're looking for virtual equivalents, things which we can enjoy together at home, in which people can participate, but in a way which, you know, can really kind of bring us that little bit of Christmas cheer. Hayley mentioned the Christmas hampers, but we're also working closely with the community hub in terms of thinking about the way in which we can help one another and help the people within our community who are most at need. And obviously Christmas brings that into really sharp focus in a way which touches our hearts and makes us really think about what we can be doing. So there is plenty in the planning phase. My idea, the really smart idea that I had at 6 o'clock this evening was, or just before, was to have 12 days of Christmas. That idea needs to be developed. And I can see on the screen what you can't see is the rest of my senior team who are smiling at me going, yeah, you've got to come up with some detail to this now. It's all very well making the big statement, but what you'll see over the next couple of weeks is development of this so that we can actually share and feel cheerful as we go into the Christmas holiday.
Another sort of Christmas related question, but it's more related to COVID. What happens if, you know, the government decide to have an early lockdown where schools have to close down, you know, 2 weeks before the end of the term? What happens then in terms of continuity of learning? Well,
what I expect is that Tim Harkins, our risk assessment guru, has got his magic, you know, his crystal ball out so that he knows exactly what's going to happen next. Now, I mean, of course, we don't know what's going to happen. What we've learned to do is to be really well prepared. And so, again, after the school, before the senior leadership team meeting this afternoon, there was also training in some advanced features associated with Teams for online learning. This was something which came up on the Year 7 live event that we did, the Settling In event that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, because we really wanted to familiarise our new parents with some of the approaches that we take. The advantage for all of you guys, students and parents, is that you've experienced the provision that we offered during the summer lockdown, the first big lockdown, and so you're already familiar with the approaches that we're taking. What we would look to do in that event would be for there to be more live provision occurring, so that students get a wide ranging learning experience. For me, it's not about it all being live, in fact, because I think there are different things that work well in different ways. It's about having a range of diets. What we know is that what was absolutely key was that engagement and the support that you offered at home to ensure that they stayed engaged with a regular school day. I think as things stand, and I'm going to touch some wood here on the table that I've got in front of me, I'm going to say that actually as a community, I think we're in a good place. I think that we're taking our responsibilities pretty seriously, and our COVID levels relative to the rest of the country are in a good place. What we are trying to ensure is that there is no complacency that sits around that. In terms of, I suppose, an add-on question, which parents frequently ask, or has been asked on other live events, is what if my child goes into self-isolation and has to learn from home? Well, we've got a dedicated team, Miss Vincent and Mr. Parkinson in particular, working very closely with our students who are having to self-isolate. We've had no further cases within the school since half term. Again, I'm really hoping, Tim is shaking his head and saying, please don't say that. But, you know, obviously, you know, as and when that occurs, it's, you know, we're a large school and we have to be prepared for those eventualities. we go through that test and trace process really carefully to ensure that we take all of the necessary precautions in order to ensure that students and families and vulnerable people within our families and communities are kept really safe. So as and when that happens, we will take those steps, and we will ensure that there's really good continuity of learning for your children in the event of them having to self-isolate or remain at home.
I've got another question.
Go on then. What have we got?
The earlier lovely message saying, thank you for keeping communications going. But what are parents' evenings going to look like, and when do you anticipate them taking place?
Yeah, so what we would love to do is to have parents' evenings in which we're seeing you in the building and we're able to have conversations which happen face to face. What we will hope for that, but we will plan for a virtual equivalent to that. We've invested in a virtual parents' evening solution, which comes highly recommended, and other schools that have used it in the past say that it works really well. You'll be glad to hear that you are not the guinea pigs. We're going to be using it for the first time next week for our Year 13 parents. That's our first parents' evening of the year. I am acutely conscious that parents of Year 8 and Year 9 were the 2 year groups that did not have a parents' evening because they were due to occur during lockdown. And I know that written reports don't make up for that consultation process. So what we're currently doing is looking at our schedule for the new year. Once the first cycle has been completed, and parents and teachers can have really good conversations around the first term's work for those events, whether virtual or in likelihood virtual, but we might hope for a face-to-face evening, but for them to be happening early into the new year. But we will be sharing those dates with you as soon as we finalise them. Okay.
Yeah, a question also just popped in. It's about, will Year 8 be taking a GCSE in Year 9? And linked to another question is, in Year 9, when do they technically choose options for your Year 10 and 11?
Okay, so we've changed that approach. So we don't have Year 8s choosing an option which they begin in Year 9 and finish in Year 10. We were very much swimming against the tide with that approach. I have to say that there was all sorts of merit in doing it that way, because it gave those early experiences of that GCSE and really helped to build confidence. But in terms of kind of wider advice and support from United Learning, it was very much out of sync with the approach that was being taken across our schools. So that's not going to be happening this year. What that means is that Year 9s will be choosing their options going into Year 10, and that will happen in the spring. There was a question earlier on which I think I responded to and published, which was, will students have to take a language? We have got great languages teaching. In fact, the results and outcomes from languages with well over 50% take up at the school are the best across I think it's, oh goodness me, no, it's 70 schools altogether, but about 50 secondary schools in the group on the state side. So our languages team are exceptional, but we don't insist on students having to take a language. We encourage them to take a language if they're good at languages, because they really do open doors, and if they enjoy languages, it's really important to carry on doing so. But that has always been a choice. We've not yet done the curriculum review and the options review for next year. However, I'm not thinking that we're likely to change that approach of that being a choice for next year, because it works really well and we have lots of students wanting to take languages. But you'll get more detail relating to the options process, parents of Year 9, in the new year, around about February, mid to late February. And Mr. Felton is leading on the options process for this year, so he will be your main link associated with that.
Did you think of mentioning trips?
Was I going to mention trips?
Trips, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's not been any questions about this, but I wanted to, we were talking about Christmas cheer earlier on. And what I want to do is to try and ensure that our young people have some things to look forward to. What we're currently working through with the organisations that we traditionally link up with are opportunities for children to have the residential experiences that they were denied, sadly, as a result of lockdown last summer. What it means is that those of you who are in year 8, you didn't get to go to Blacklands, which is very much a rite of passage for our students here at Shoreham Academy. A great opportunity and amazing fun. It's the trip that students often look back on as being the thing that they most enjoyed amongst their time at the academy. So we have spoken to Blacklands, and year 8s will be going to Blacklands, as well as year 7s, and they're going to be completely separate during Experience Week. The year 9s, those of you were not able to go on the bushcraft trip last year, so we're trying to work through that as well. I don't have confirmation of those trips yet, and obviously those trips are going to be dependent upon what we're allowed to do. But I'm determined, for our children to have something to look forward to, for us to have trips and activities that families are in a position to be able to afford, so not to be unduly burdensome financially, because I know how tough it is for many of our families at the moment, and I want us to be able to begin to plan towards these things so that you can commit. And I very much want all of our year 7s, I want all of our year 8s involved in that Blacklands trip, and plenty of students in year 9 getting involved in the bushcraft trip, which is really, really memorable. If you want to get a sneak preview of some of the things, it's not really like I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, but there's certainly some great skills and fun to be had on the bushcraft trip. There aren't any bush tucker trials, I assure you of that, but there we go. How are we doing for questions, Hayley?
Just one other has just popped in. How many options do they choose?
Okay, so this is again subject to review, so we will not be able to give you the full detail of this. We won't be able to give you the full detail of this until the spring, but typically in year 9 going into year 10, there's a choice of 3 options. So that's what it's likely to be going into year 10. I'm conscious of time, Hayley. Yes. What other questions have we got?
Well, questions just popped in about what about trips, but I think you've just spoken about those.
I guess that alongside those residential trips, I'm trying to think about the big pieces at the moment. So, the biggest piece is that, the biggest rock in our jar for this year is to ensure that every child in the school is able to learn all of their lessons with as much creativity as we can deliver. And as I said in one of the questions that has been published, obviously there are significant limitations on the range of things that we can do in school at the moment, but we're always looking to push that in a way which can also satisfy our risk assessment approach. Alongside those residential trips, which are kind of like the big trip approaches, which we're currently thinking will be other opportunities to happen, particularly during Experience Week. So, I want the students to know that that week is a week that they should be looking forward to. I do feel I'm sincerely optimistic on the basis of recent news, and also in terms of the progression of the pandemic, that we're going to be able to do some fun things and really be able to open things out as we move into the summer. Obviously, I can't guarantee that. But that's what we are hoping, and that's what we're planning towards.
And there is 2 things that have just popped in. One says, I apologise, but I was late to the meeting. Have year 8 got assessments soon? And should they be revising? So I don't know if you do a quick précis of that. Well,
do you know what? I'm not going to do a quick précis of it, but I'm going to let that parent know, because we mentioned just earlier on that this event has been recorded, and you can go back to that as well as the entire presentation, and it will be uploaded to the school website tomorrow. So Tim Harkins is going to be publishing, and there's full details relating to the assessments as well as KPIs, as well as to what's happening in English and maths and so on and so forth, in terms of, as well as pastoral care. So anyone who's arrived on the call or who has had maybe a broken link during the course of this evening, you are very, very welcome to go and look at the recording. Also, if you do have any questions that occur to you at any point, then please send them in to us. The best line for you to reach people on, if you're not sure of who to ask, is info@shoreham-academy.org, and we will do our best through info. Tracy works that hotline each and every day, and not just during school time, but also during the holidays and at weekends. We try and get that response back to you as soon as we can.
Well, there's two last things. There's a couple of questions that have come in, but we'll probably answer those directly. But one says, think you should do an online teacher pantomime for Christmas. Oh, no, they shouldn't, believe me, is my response there. And the second is a lovely thank you, and it says, thank you all for this info evening. It's so useful to have this information, and fill in the blanks after year 7 was so unusual for the current year 8. I felt a little disconnected from the school as I've had little contact, but this evening really helps, and it's great to be able to ask questions. Thank you for staying late and putting this on for us. I thought that's probably a lovely way to close.
That's a really
Can
nice.
I just say?
Yeah, go on then, Martin.
Thank you. No, just to say in response to that about how proud you should be of your children, really, at the moment with what's going on. You think they've had to come back to something completely different, and they've had to learn when to stand up, when to sit down, when to put the masks on, when to take the masks off, when they can eat, when they can't eat, different lunch times, different break times and that. And I tell you what, they have just been absolutely fantastic. So they're a real credit to you. I always say, don't I, it's about the 3-legged stool. It's about, the school working and with the students and with the parents at home. And from what we're seeing of your children in school, but we seem to be getting that right. I saw there was a question came up about Common Lit as well. Just very quickly, I think there might be some confusion about how that works in comparison to Hegarty Maths. So I'm going to have a word with the English department to send out something, whether it be an email or via Jim's weekly message, so that there's something clear there about how Common Lit works. And finally, there's a question sent earlier in the day about coats. Miss Joyce, do you very quickly want to?
Yes. Sorry. Yes. There was a question earlier about coats. Now, coats can be left because obviously we haven't got the lockers at the minute. So coats can be left on the back of the chairs. And when students do move to modern foreign languages or PE, they can take them with them if they wish, but otherwise they can leave them on the back of their chairs. That's not a problem at all, because obviously the kids are usually in the same classroom. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much for that, Claire, and thanks very much for that as well, Martin. In terms of questions, we've been doing our best to keep up with the questions that you've been bringing in, and some of which we've sent back replies to you privately, as well as which are sometimes more specific to your requests. Do bear with us. If you've got the patience to remain on the line after the event ends, we will continue to answer those questions. I think that they will still come through. Is that right, Tim? Will they still come through after the event ends?
Yes, they will for a short time.
Okay, so we'll do our best to race through those. But if you feel that there's any question that we've not answered, please do email info, and we will get back to you, because we really want to make sure that you're clear in what it is that we're doing. I absolutely echo what Martin's saying. Your kids are terrific. They're an absolute credit to you. Claire was talking earlier about attendance. And I know that the national picture is really grim for students attending school, and also about engagement levels where it's not the coronavirus as an issue, but the engagement. Our attendance during last school week matched up, barring about 0.5%. to the equivalent time this time last year when we'd never even heard of pandemic, coronavirus, etc. And that says a lot for your children and your commitment to their studies. It is really important. They need to keep coming in. If they're still out there, you need to be there, guys, because if you're not there, you can't learn, you can't stay ahead of the curve, and you can't live out your dreams in the future. That's about it from us. We will take on board the suggestion of the pantomime. Oh yes, we will. We'll see what we can come up with. We you know, it's a bit like our Christmas assemblies. We'll probably need to do them a little bit differently this year, but you're not going to miss out on the fun of Christmas. Before that, there are some exams that you need to prepare for, and your unit tests, your end of cycle tests. So let's get ready for those, and then we can enjoy Christmas in a really well-deserved way. Is there anything else, Hayley, before we go?
One final little message says thank you for a great informative presentation.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good that it's been informative and it's been helpful. Have a great evening. Have a great rest of your week. We will be in touch soon. Make sure that you stay safe and stay well. Thank you.